All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is part 2 of Target 8A, multiplying polynomials. This is, again, the second video. It's episode 5. Last video was episode 4. So let's continue on here, and let's, again, remember when you multiply polynomials, you're going to go ahead and just use your distributive property. So if we take a look here, we actually have what we call a binomial times a binomial, a two-term polynomial times a two-term polynomial. And when you do this, all you really need to make sure is that each term in the first one gets multiplied by each term in the second one. So basically how we do this, we take the first term times the two terms, the first term in the first polynomial times the two terms in the second polynomial. And then we go ahead and we take the first term, the second term in the first polynomial times each term in the second polynomial. So you're taking each term in the first polynomial times each term in the second. Okay? So I'll show you what I mean by this here. So let's go ahead and multiply a plus 7 times a plus 3. Well, if you do that, we're going to take a times a, which is a squared. We're going to take a times 4, which is positive 4a. Oops. We're going to take 7 times a, which is positive 7a, and then we're going to take 7 times 4, which is positive 28. So ladies and gentlemen, then when you're done with that, you notice there should be 4 terms there, and then all you have left to do is combine like terms. So for instance, these middle two terms here are both a to the first power. So we're just going to write this as a to the second, then we're going to combine those two middle terms. 4a plus 7a is 11a, and then end up with the plus 28. No other like terms to combine. It's in standard form, and there you go. Same thing with this second one. We're going to take and make sure we take 2a times r, and we're going to take, 2r times r, and we're going to take 2r times 1. So if I take, ladies and gentlemen, let me erase that so we'll do this one at a time. So if I take 2r times r, that's 2r squared. We're going to take 2r times 1, that's a positive 2r. We're going to take negative 3 times r, that's a negative 3r, and I hope I don't run off the edge here. And take negative 3 times 1, that's a negative 3. And then again, look to combine like terms. Your two middle terms should be able to combine together to both r to the first. That's 2r squared. Minus 2r minus 3r is minus 1r, and then minus 3. All right, let's go to the next slide. Same thing. You got a binomial times a binomial. We're going to make sure we multiply v times v, first term times first term, that's v squared. We're going to take v times negative 6, which is negative 6v. We're going to take positive 6 times v, which is a positive 6v. We're going to take positive 6 times negative 6, which is a negative 36. And then your last step, again, is just to make sure that you're combining in like terms. Well, if we take a look here, what's nice is the negative 6v and the positive 6v cancel out. So you got v squared minus 36 is your answer. The answer only has 2 terms in it. All right. Now, along the way, you can stop this at any time, and if you want to go through and try to do these on your own and then come back and play the video, you sure can. But you can pause it, you can stop, you can rewind it, anything you need to do. Now, a lot of times with these two types of problems, people get confused and think that I'm just going to treat it like we did with our single terms to a power. So they want to take this exponent times x, call that x squared, and then they want to take the 9 to the second part, just call it plus 81. Well, I hate to say this, ladies and gentlemen, that's a no-no, okay? It's not like back what we were doing before when we were just taking 9x to the second power, where, see, that's a single term. Here we have 2 terms with that plus sign between them. So, ladies and gentlemen, you just can't distribute the exponent to each thing inside and call it 81x squared like we did before. This, by the way, is correct for this single term. It's not correct for this binomial up here. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me erase this, and we're going to go at this. The best way to do these really all it is like a previous problem. What you're basically doing, ladies and gentlemen, is you're just taking x plus 9 times x plus 9. That's what it means to square something. Okay? You're taking it times itself, so we're taking x plus 9 times x plus 9. And if you do that, you just do the same thing you've done before. X times x is x squared. x times 9 is a positive 9x. 9 times x is a positive 9x. And then 9 times 9 is 81. And then just combine your like terms together. X squared plus 18x plus 81. See, when we did that before, if you just try to take and distribute incorrectly the 2 to these two terms, you're leaving out this middle term right here. Okay? So now let's try it with this other problem. So I would strongly suggest you just write it out first. 4x minus 3 times 4x minus 3. And you just, because then you'll make sure you just use that prof. No, we actually call this FOIL. I don't like to use that term very often, meaning take first terms in each binomial times each other, the outer terms, the inner terms, and the last. So in other words, when we take 4x times 4x, you're taking the first terms and you're multiplying them together. That's 16x squared. Now you're multiplying the two outer terms together. You're taking 4x times a negative 3, which is a negative 12x. Now you're doing the inner terms, which would be negative 3 times 4x would be negative 12x. And then finally, you're doing the last terms. Negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. And then as we've said before, you look at your middle two terms to combine together. They're the same sign, so they don't cancel out. It's 16x squared minus 24x plus 9 would be your answer. So again, the key here is to make sure when you see a binomial squared like this, make sure that you write it out as two binomials and then use the process of making sure each term gets multiplied by, in what the first one gets multiplied by each term of the second. Again, we call that FOIL. First, here's your first two terms, then your outer terms, then your inner terms, and then your last terms. Okay, it's called FOIL. Now, again, you don't have to remember that, but that's okay. So this ends part 2. There'll be part 3 coming up here in a minute. It's going to be very short. We got 1 or 2 examples left, and then we're going to call it good for the week. Okay.